Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're diving into a word you've definitely heard before, sin. But what if I told you that the common understanding of it barely scratches the surface? What if it's not really about breaking rules at all?
So let's just jump right in. When you hear the word sin, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For real, just think about it for a second. For most of us, it's probably about breaking a commandment, right? Doing something you're not supposed to do. But the theological sources we're digging into today present a much, much bigger idea. They suggest sin isn't so much an action as it is a state of being, a deep, fundamental alienation from life itself. Sounds heavy, I know. So let's unpack what that actually means. First things first, we've got to get past this idea of sin as just breaking the rules. Let's really pull apart that common misconception. This quote right here from theologian Frank McCaccia is a total game changer. Our sin is not the mere breaking of a commandment, but our deeper alienation from life. Just let that sink in. This one thought completely reframes the entire conversation. It shifts our focus away from a checklist of bad deeds and points us toward a fundamental condition of our existence.
And that brings us right here to sin as alienation. We're not talking about something you do, we're talking about something you are. A fundamental state of being.
So what is this state of being? Well, the sources define it as a radical reorientation. It's what happens when we put ourselves at the very center of our own universe. God's rightful place gets pushed to the margins, and the shift corrupts our entire internal disposition. It's not about a single mistake. It's about the very direction our life is pointed. And this alienation, the separation, really happens on two levels. First, there's an alienation from the life of God, the very source of all life and goodness. And second, there's an alienation from life as it was meant to be lived. It messes with our connection to the divine, and it messes with our own created purpose.
Which all boils down to this really crucial point. It's not just about what we do, it's about what we become. In this view, sin isn't just a stain on our record. It actually changes the fabric of who we are. And that kind of change has some serious consequences. That brings us to our next section, sin's power to deform, its ability to literally fracture our wholeness.
Now, to really get what's being broken here, we need to understand this incredible concept called shalom. This is so much more than just peace and quiet. It's the biblical idea of universal flourishing, of complete wholeness. The best way to picture it is like a perfect ecosystem, where our relationships with God, with each other, and with the entire created world are all working in perfect harmony. It's the way things are supposed to be.
And this is where the problem comes in. Drawing from the work of Cornelius Plantinga, sin is the force that shatters that shalom. It's not just a tiny crack. It's a comprehensive deformation of the human condition. It takes that beautiful, functioning ecosystem and just wrecks it. And you can see these fractures all over the place. On a personal level, it's that feeling of being trapped, enslaved to negative patterns we just can't seem to kick. Spiritually, it's that separation from the source of life, what the texts call spiritual death, that leads to deep despair. And it doesn't stay personal. It spills out into the world, creating societal injustice and corrupting the systems we live in. Frank McCaccia puts it so powerfully, sin places humanity in contradiction with its own purpose. We basically end up fighting against the very reason we exist. And you'd think that would be the end of the story, right? Just a permanent state of brokenness. But here's where the whole narrative takes this fascinating, paradoxical twist. Our next section is all about this formative paradox, how this deep brokenness can actually somehow lead to growth. It sounds totally backwards, doesn't it? I mean, how in the world can destruction lead to something good? Well, the sources lay out a kind of pathway. It all starts with acknowledging the problem, that little tug inside you, what's called the Spirit's conviction, that lets you know something's not right. That awareness is what drives you to look for a solution, for redemption. And in that search, your moral compass gets stronger. You develop a deeper sense of responsibility. The end result of this whole journey is a complete reorientation of your life towards wholeness, towards holiness. So here's the key. Acknowledging sin becomes a transformative act, not just a reason to feel guilty. The point isn't to wallow in shame. The point is to use that awareness as the fuel for profound positive change. So how does that change happen? How do you actually reverse all this damage? Well, that's what our final section is about. The sources describe it as nothing less than a supernatural transformation.
And this is a really important takeaway. According to this theological view, you can't just fix this by trying harder or through sheer willpower. This reversal requires more than just human effort. It demands a supernatural reorientation of the will. And this brings us to this big theological word, justification. Now, forget any image you have of a courtroom and a judge's gavel. Think of it less as a legal verdict and more as an embrace. It's being mercifully pulled into this circle of divine advocacy and witness, life, and communion. It's not a sentence, it's a welcome home.
And wow, this quote from Jürgen Moltmann just says it all. The Holy Spirit is the righteousness and justice of God, which creates justice, the justification of life itself. So the Spirit isn't some passive observer. It's an active, creative force that literally brings justice and life into being, restoring that shalom that was broken.
And this is the perfect reversal of all that fracturing we saw earlier. The Spirit's actions are a direct antidote. It reverses those self-centered patterns. It reconstitutes human flourishing. It helps liberate creation itself. And it weaves things like gratitude, compassion, and courage back into the very core of our being. It's a total restoration. So we're going to leave you with this final thought to chew on. If our deepest flaws are a condition, this state of alienation, and not just a series of bad choices, how does that change our view of justice and forgiveness? Not just for others, but for ourselves too. Something to think about.